I want to talk about the New York Mets and stories coming out. And by the way, I would give a shout out to Josh from Off the Mat, giving me a shout out on the phone today, and a shootout actually, talking a little sports with him on the phone. He told me that the Wilpons gave a deadline today that they will be negotiating, deciding in the next week who the next owner or owners will be for the New York Mets. They are willing to sell the team in full now. There is no 50% or 60% or 80%. They're willing to sell the team, and they're going to be asking for big mucho dinero.
The question is, though, how long will it take if there's going to be a lot of bidding wars? We've seen it now.
I don't think it's going to take that long. I think there's one guy in particular that everybody keeps talking about, and that's Cohen, who lives here on Long Island, that wanted to buy the New York Mets, wanted sole ownership of this team. He wants to build a team the way he thinks they could win and win championships. And the Mets wouldn't give it to him. And he decided to walk away from that deal. And now that it's opening up and there might be a deal in hand, there quite possibly could be an offer on the table for about $3.5 billion I'm listening to.
Right. I think Cohen is the favorite, too, just because, remember, his main problem was the percentages of what they would get from the Wilpons. He didn't want to just completely override the Wilpons. Now, if the Wilpons are completely selling it, he's going to be all in. But again, that won't rule out the other ones we've heard either, though, with Josh Harris and as well as the biggest one, A-Rod and J-Lo.
A-Rod-Joe?
Which I'm sure a lot of fans want for different reasons.
Why do the fans want Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez? First of all, they're not going to be investing all the money. Okay, it's not them. They're bringing in the guy that owns Vitamin Water. They're going to bring in other big-time billionaires. Maybe they're the faces of the Mets organization as the GM, A-Rod becoming the GM or whatever he becomes, the president or the face of the organization or the ownership. Here's the problem. I love Alex Rodriguez. I think Alex Rodriguez is a great baseball mind, one of the best baseball minds we've seen in our time, in our era. The problem is, Alex Rodriguez has always been the center of attention, not only in the world with his wife or his fiance, and Jennifer Lopez, who owns a piece of the Miami Dolphins. Would that help the New York Mets organization bringing in a superstar of that magnitude who likes to strunt her butt all over the news, the newspapers? Does that help the organization? Does that give the organization a sense of relief, having a girl or a woman of that magnitude strutting herself on magazines, in the Sports Illustrated, or maybe being the center of attention here in New York?
Hasn't worked for the Miami Dolphins, so.
It hasn't. I mean, Met fans should not be happy hearing that Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez might be able to take over the organization. First of all, Alex Rodriguez, as great of a mind he is, he's never run an organization, okay? He's never run a baseball organization. It's a completely different thing as a player. And knowing that the players respect you, yes, you're a great player. You've become a really good Samaritan to some of the young Spanish players in the MLB. But does this help the New York Mets moving forward? And the answer is probably not. Now, bringing in Cohen, you know Cohen's going to spend mucho dinero to bring in free agents. This guy's a multi-billionaire. He's one of the biggest hedge fund owners in New York State and around the country. I mean, this guy knows how to make money. Dollars and cents make sense when you have guys like Mookie Betts that's going to be available next year, JT Realmuto. You have some big pitching prospects that are going to be available next year. And you know he's got big pockets. And if you're a Met fan, you should be very excited to have somebody like Cohen take over the team because you know he's going to open up the pockets. It's no longer going to be coupons. It will be more like billions. And that's what we'll be talking about. If Cohen owns the team, you're going to see the front cover of the magazines or the front cover of the newspaper saying, Billionaire Cohen. That's what you're going to see. Because the guy knows how to spend money. The guy knows how to make money. That's who you want to run your organization.
And it's also going to help keep some of the current players they have, too. Obviously, Syndergaard has been rumored in and out of many times. He wants out. Now he wants to stay. Then he leaves. Again, some of the other pitchers. Obviously, Pete Alonso, when his time comes up, he's going to get a big contract, and that'll help hit the Mets' chances of keeping him for sure if they end up getting somebody big like that. And again, even though they're notoriously cheap with the Wilpons, obviously.
Notoriously.
Right. Their payroll's still more in the middle of the pack. It's not like they're a small market team. So that'll boost them to be probably top 5 or close to spenders when you look judging from a payroll perspective.
If you're a Met fan, you can go with the Harris family who could take over the team. He owns the 76ers. He also owns the
Devils.
The Devils. So he owns 2 organizations, two professional organizations, and they're run very, very well. The Devils, even though in the last couple of years they haven't won anything, they're very well run. They have a good GM in place. They have a good coach in place. This is a very well-oiled machine. And even the 76ers, in the last 3 or 4 years, this team has been a playoff team. They got guys like Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. They have players that they've built their team around and built their organization around. So having somebody of that magnitude take over and kind of help the organization grow would be the smartest thing to do if you were an organization that's looking for great ownership and a guy that knows how to do it and has done it before.
Yeah, the other question, too, is how they will bring in the GMs, too. And again, if it is Harris, he does have experience with that type of thing. But again, it's a different sport. It's baseball, we'll have to see. And then the same thing with Cohen. I mean, Cohen owns a lot of different things. And like we were saying, is a billionaire hedge fund guy. But again, will he hire the right people, too, is the other
Now,
question.
Josh is saying there's many other groups. Yeah, there is. There's about 7 or 9 groups that I heard. But these are the 2 big groups, 3 big groups that everybody keeps saying. And Cohen already came out and said that he is not bidding until he sees the last bid. So if he's going to bid, he's going to make sure he's the last person to bid because he's going to put a huge amount of money on the table. He wants to own the Mets. He grew up a Met fan, and he's already come out and said he lives here in Long Island. He wants to own the New York Mets and help the New York Mets build a well-oiled machine where they can compete with the New York Yankees moving forward for many, many years to come.
Right. They need that kind of reputation, too, for a big name. Billionaire type guy too, because again, it's something that they haven't really had. Obviously, the Wilpons were rich, but again, they obviously kept their money to themselves. And again, if Cohen brings in that type of reputation, that'll definitely help. And again, he wanted it originally. It's not like he pulled out because he hated the team or anything. He pulled out because of what the Wilpons were doing. So if they're going to completely leave, that's a big boost for Cohen's chances, especially since he has the most money of all the competing bids.
And I know a lot of people say, well, they're not going to compete with the New York Yankees. You're absolutely right. They're in different. One's in the National League, one's in the American League. They're in different leagues. But here's the thing. The New York Yankees own New York. They've owned New York for the last 30 years. Say whatever you want. The Mets were in the World Series 4 years ago. You can say whatever you want. The Yankees have run baseball here in New York practically forever. Now, if the Mets can compete and actually bring in players like JT Realmuto or Mookie Betts, where they're putting superstars around, a Pete Alonso, if they decide to get rid of Cespedes and you decide to move around, maneuver, and bring in some pitching and some relief pitching that they desperately needed, well, then the Mets could be in a situation where you could be talking about the Mets, not only about the Yankees in the back pages of the newspaper. So they are competing with the Yankees, not in the same league, not against each other. They're competing for the fans. They're competing for the tabloids. They're competing for the press. And if you're a Met fan, you have to understand and have to look at it in the big picture.
Which players that either debuted if they were a baseball player or a hockey player that were in minor leagues or were drafted in the case of NFL and NBA in last decade, the 2010 to 2019, are already Hall of Famers if they retired today? What active players?
Mike Trout being one of them. I mean, everybody knows what Mike Trout is. This guy is one of the greatest baseball players we've seen since Mickey Mantle. I mean, his ability to do the things that he's a 5-tool player, great defensive player, can catch anything. He runs like a deer. He steals bases. Defensively, he's as good as anybody in the outfield. And by the way, the guy can hit. He's got power. He can hit for average. I mean, this guy, go look at his numbers in the last 4 or 5 years. His numbers are Mickey Mantle-esque, A-Rod-esque. Gary Sheffield when he was younger. I mean, Go look at his numbers. They're absolutely outstanding. This guy is the greatest baseball. If this guy keeps up the way he is playing, this guy could go down as one of the top 3 greatest baseball players ever to play the game. That's how good he is.
Even in the year he got hurt, if you looked at what his numbers were on, he was on pace for, I think he was on pace for like a 54 home run, 136 RBIs or something like that, and I think at the time he got hurt, he had a 312 batting average, which would have been one of the most insane individual seasons.
Who do you got, Speedy?
I'll go to football now. I'll go for the 2011 NFL draft, which is a lot of loaded players. Von Miller. I think Von Miller at this point has done everything needed to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, but he's played like garbage last year. You know,
he had one down year last year. I agree with you on that. But again, I always say the credentials are usually 8 years. If you have 8 dominant years, I think you could get in. He's close to 100 sacks. I believe he's at 96 or 97
right now.
Which,
96
again,
and a half, 97.
I think anyone who gets 100 sacks should be in the Hall of Fame regardless.
Why isn't John Abraham not there?
I think he'll get there.
He has 136 sacks.
I know he should. No, he should definitely be a Hall of Famer. I think any player that has 100 sacks in their career should be in the Hall of Fame, and he should be able to eclipse that this season. Even if he does struggle a little bit, he should get more than 3 sacks. You're right. He had a down year last year, and people were thinking he was going to get traded. But I think at this point, between what he did and also what he did in the Super Bowl too, being so dominant for the Broncos in that postseason, I think that really makes a big difference. One of the most consistent pass rushers we've seen, and probably the best outside rusher we've seen in a long time, really. Him and probably DeMarcus Ware are what you're looking at when it comes to like this generation's outside rushers for outside linebackers.
I would say right now, the way we've seen him play in hockey, it's Connor McDavid. I mean, Connor McDavid has been one of the best players in hockey for the last 2 years. This guy was an MVP candidate every single year since he's been in the league. And he hasn't won it yet. But he's going to have the opportunity. He hasn't won it yet.
Yes, he has.
Oh, he did win it.
He did. I think he won it in 17, I believe.
So he won the MVP. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know he won the MVP. So you're talking about a kid who's only 21, 22 years old that's won already an MVP. He's been in the league for 3.5 years. And this guy has been as dominant as could be. Now, if he stays healthy, this guy's going to go down as one of the greats. You talk about Alexander Ovechkin. You talk about Sidney Crosby. This guy could be a multiple. You can compare his style to both players. Big, strong, great skater, great ability to puck handle and put the puck in the net. So Connor McDavid, he's been in the league for 4 years, 3.5 years, and I can honestly say he's not yet a Hall of Famer. No. But if he continues this up, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. In the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to be talking about Connor McDavid as one of the great players we've seen in the last decade.
And he's still only, 23 or something like that?
22, 21.
Wow. Yeah, so he's got a lot of time. You just got to hope he could recover from the injury he just endured last season.
And he's got a sexy girlfriend, so that's something to look at, too. So, right, just telling you the truth. I mean, I'm not lying. I'm a radio show host, but he's got a beautiful girlfriend. So
I'll do a baseball one now, and we mentioned him a lot. We mentioned him a lot with the Nationals broadcaster Charlie Slows. We had him on, and Max Scherzer. Simple as that. Max Scherzer has been one of the best pitchers in baseball for a very long time. I believe he debuted in 2011, so he would qualify for this with the Diamondbacks. Now he had 2 iffy years to begin his career, where he had some control issues. He had like mid-3 ERA, so he wasn't great. But after that 2013 season, he's been really dominant ever since. Very consistent. Rarely gets hurt. He had some finger issues last year, but rarely gets hurt, and he's been a consistent, almost 300 strikeout guy every year, one of the best power pitchers we've seen. And again, he's been up and down in the postseason, but remember, when he was with the Tigers, he was a big reason why they went to the World Series in 2012, and then obviously this year with the Nationals, winning the World Series, his first of his career. So I think he will get in now. I think that was something that needed to cement his legacy as a whole. And again, being he's so durable, it's not Clayton Kershaw where he's gotten injured a lot recently, though Kershaw's a Hall of Famer too. He's been very steady where you don't have to say, all right, we need one more year to prove it. He's in.
How about Russell Wilson? I mean, Russell Wilson, who has been one of the most dominant quarterbacks in the NFL, went to the Seattle Seahawks, won a championship. I mean, what Russell Wilson has done for small quarterbacks has really transitioned the game, the mobile quarterbacks, the definition of what he does behind the line of scrimmage, and really seeing the game a completely different way as a small guy, a guy that everybody said he claimed he's 5'10" when he came to the league. I really believe Russell Wilson's 5'8", 5'9". But even behind the line of scrimmage with some of these big offensive linemen, this guy has been as dominant as a player we've seen in many, many years. And really in the last 2 or 3 years, who's been better than Russell Wilson? Really, there is not many. Maybe
really
one
only
or
Patrick
two.
Mahomes. That's it.
I don't even think Patrick Mahomes has been better than Russell Wilson in the last 3 years. Go look at numbers. If you transition the numbers from Russell Wilson, what he's done in the last 3 years, to Patrick Mahomes the last 2 years, he's been just as good. I mean, Russell Wilson was a runner-up as MVP last year. I believe should have won the MVP over Lamar Jackson, especially with that Seattle Seahawks team, and they weren't that good offensively. No. They didn't have that many weapons, and he made that team that much better with a bad offensive line. So Russell Wilson would be my guy, especially what he's done in the last 6-7 years.
All right. Last one for me, because we got to go to a break soon, is also that same 2011 draft, and that's Julio Jones. I think Julio Jones, the touchdown totals may make it hard to get in right away like he maybe should, because he had that big touchdown drought in 2017 into 2018. But that, again, he's been one of the most consistent receivers outside of the 2013 season where he tore his ACL. He's really been healthy. He's had some minor injuries, but he's played through them a lot, and he's really been very consistent throughout that. And I think he will eventually get in too. He's over 10,000 yards already in his career. Again, the touchdowns could hold him back from getting in quicker than he should, but he's always been very consistent. It was phenomenal in the postseason for Atlanta, pretty much every game they played in. So again, I think he'll end up getting in as one of the best receivers this decade, really, that we've seen.